long-term extension may extend beyond the current grading period. So it could go beyond the current grading period or a year if aggravating circumstances exist. But it wouldn't go beyond 90 days under the amended bill.
Any questions of council?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Question.
Senator Peake.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Even under aggravating circumstances, they cannot go beyond 90 days. Is that correct?
Yes.
Were you involved in any negotiations or working out these meetings? No.
Yes.
Is that your intention not to go beyond 90 days even with aggravated?
When we're talking about, Mr. Chairman, when we're talking about aggravating circumstances, most times, the school board can define aggravating circumstances because it's not defined here for any way they choose. Okay? You could almost make anything an aggravating circumstances the way it's left, so that gives the school board a lot of latitude. Secondarily, when we talk about aggravating circumstances, this does nothing to stop the school from outside the 90-day period for another aggravating circumstance. That's defined in other words,
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Peake.
Question, Senator State. So is it your understanding that if they define, how do they define aggravating circumstances? If they define the aggravating circumstances, find aggravating circumstances, they then can suspend beyond the 90 days?
It would be beyond the current grading period and even carrying over to the next year.
But it's still just
But
90
not
days.
90.
But they cannot extend beyond 90 days? Is that
Mr. Chairman and Senator Peake, yes, and understand when we talk about 90 days, we're not talking like 3 months, we're talking about 90 school days, that's half a year. Half a year.
just need to be clear? Mr. Chairman, I'm just trying to.
Senator Donovan.
Just in the spirit of the debate of the subcommittee, can we hear what the opposition is?
Yeah, we're gonna get that. I just wanna make sure everyone is clear what the patrons offering as amendments. Because we had expressed to him that 45 days is a limited number of days.
And
So,
Mr. Chairman, I've doubled it.
and the patron has doubled it and allowed it to go into the following year if it's a 90-day suspension. All right.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Howe.
I just wanted to note that there was a lot of support for the original bill, and I think Senator Stanley's gone a real long way on this. So.
Okay.
It gets better.
Oh, it
On
does?
the other three. I go further.
Oh,
All right.
no.
No, not
You
too
may
far.
lose my
Sen-
vote.
No, not too far. Okay. Just as a-
Okay, if we don't have any more questions on the amendments, now we'd like to hear, let me start with the people are in favor. Just, if you have anything to add to what we didn't have last week, please just give me that in as brief as possible.
Mr. Chair, committee members, Amy Willard, Legal Aid Justice Center. I would just say on the amendment, as Senator Stanley said, 90 days is a full semester of school. The schools still have expulsion at their disposal. The schools still have reassignment at their disposal. They have alternatives to suspension at their disposal, and that would be for one incident. A full semester of school is a long time for a student and very difficult to recover from academically as it is. So I would just add that for the committee's consideration. Thank you.
All right.
John Smith of the Virginia Board of People with Disabilities, just here to express our support, and particularly because of the disparate impact of this amount on students with disabilities.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Allison Gilbreth, Voices for Virginia's Children, again reiterating our support for the bill, something that we didn't mention last week. It's just we wanted to make sure that this bill is not saying we're doing nothing. It's saying that we want to address the underlying issues of the children's problems. And another point is that children are not necessarily going home to a mom and a dad. Many of them are going home to nothing, and suspending them does not improve that situation.
All right. Now let's hear the opposition.
Mr. Chairman, one of the things that was talked about when you heard this bill last week was the number of suspensions statewide, and I went back and I looked at the numbers. And what we're talking about here is long-term suspensions. And in the last year we have data for, which is 14-15, there were 2,819 long-term suspensions. That's out of almost 1.3 million public school children in Virginia. Only 2,800 were suspended. That is 0.2%. So this is not a situation in which school systems are long-term suspending students at the drop of a hat. This is for serious offenses, very serious offenses. This is not about pulling pigtails or throwing paper airplanes, which are some of the examples that we used last week. We're not suspending kids out of school for those types of offenses. It's a small, very small fraction of the population, and it's used in serious cases, and we need to preserve school division's ability to be able to maintain a safe and orderly environment for the extremely disruptive, unsafe behaviors that do sometimes occur. I appreciate Senator Stanley extending the amount of time of long-term suspension, but when you have students who commit criminal offenses, who sexually assault other students, who seriously injure other students or staff, we need to be able to do something more than suspend them for 90 days or have the option to do so.
Would that not, if they are assaulting, would that not be
No.
expulsion?
We would have to expel them now. What this is going to do, and this is what I told you last week, and it hasn't changed, this is going to take students who normally we would long-term suspend, which is not as serious of a sanction. We would normally long-term suspend them. Now we are going to expel them because you're tying our hands with a suspension. I think that Senator Stanley, seemed to indicate that if there's a criminal offense involved, we could go longer than 90 days, but we can't. Not call it a long-term suspension. This language, the way the amendment has been presented, a long-term suspension is limited to 90 days, period. That's it. So if we want to go more than 90 days, we would have to expel the student. And I don't think that that's what you all want to do. It's certainly not what school boards want to do, but if you take away that option, that's going to be what happens.
I'm just trying to understand this in the context of outcomes. So what outcome is improved by keeping a child out for any events if the desire is ultimately for them to return beyond half of the year?
Well, one outcome is the outcomes for all of the other students in that classroom or in that school.
So are they ever capable of being reintegrated into that school successfully?
Absolutely, and we do it all the time. And when we suspend students, we don't, by and large, we provide alternative education services. And so we are working with those students. They are coming back. If we do a long-term suspension, that student's coming back after 364 days. And so we have every incentive to work with that student and provide services when we have the resources available. And that's another topic for another day. But the number one recommendation from Just Children, which is the proponent of this bill, was to provide, for the General Assembly to provide more funding for alternatives. We don't have that, but you're taking away one option.
Your argument is still the same with 90 days as it was before.
It really is, and I will say that we suggested another provision in the substitute language that we suggested. One of the things we would be willing to offer is that we would do a review if we want to suspend a student for longer than 90 days and find that there's aggravating circumstances. We suggested doing a review at the end of each grading period if we go beyond 90 days to see if the student is ready to come back. That would incentivize the student and the parents to work with whatever alternative services are being provided, incentivize the student to be doing good things, and maybe be able to come back earlier. We suggested that, but I understand that the Senator Stanley didn't accept that, but I just provide that.
So I need to understand what added value there is for reinstituting that child into the same program as opposed to moving them to another school. If they're so alarming to the students who are already there, why don't you utilize the option of moving them to another school? But I need to know constructively. I would suggest, just based on a medical perspective, the longer you are away, the more difficult it is to succeed at reintegration. And I'm just trying to understand under what premise it aids you in reintegrating that child for them to be out more than half of the year. I just don't hear any evidence that there's a constructive component to that it's more just separating them, but you have other options for separation.
Well, not in every school system. For example, a lot of school systems only have one high school, so there's not another place to send the student. If you have a male student who sexually assaults a female student, she shouldn't have that boy back in her class 90 days later.
Mr. Chairman, if I may say, that I don't know of any school system that if a student sexually assaults another student, they should not be expelled. That's different. See, they're lumping everything into. When we're talking about, if somebody gets in a fist fight, Mr. Chairman, we
assault.
understand that's assault and battery, but maybe that's not a full year offense. But if somebody pulls out a knife, they're gonna get expelled. If
For what?
somebody breaks the skin, breaks an arm, if somebody sexually assaults somebody, this is not addressing that. They're gonna get, and they should get, and if they don't get expelled, then that's the bigger problem.
Alright, let's, Senator Pete.
Yes, one, to follow up on Senator, thank you, Mr. Chairman, follow up on Senator Donovan's question. I think understanding what her issue is, and mine, isn't 90 days going to be enough? How do you get them back in after a year? Because 90, are they going to be any better after 364 days for the rest of the student body than after 90 days? I guess that's the point. Why 364 makes a magical figure to bring them back into school versus 90 days or 120 days or whatever?
Senator, if I can.
Yes,
Tom,
sir.
Tom, go ahead.
The 364 is not something that's used one lightly or used often. Long-term suspension may not go more than 90 days, okay? But if you have a difficult situation, and I'm going to go back to what we talked about last week, a criminal offense in some way, and
expulsion.
And then that will expel.
They'll be expelled.
Expelled, and that we don't provide service to students who are expelled. We do provide service to students who are long-term suspended. And so if we want to help the child, then we would let us go past the 90 days so we can continue to provide instruction in some way to the child. Because when we expel them, that ends it, except for children with disabilities. And so that's why we would like to have another tool in the toolbox to, one, keep the school safe in extreme situations. We're not talking about, two kids fighting in the lunchroom. We're talking about, and I had this, 3 young ladies waiting for for a 4th young lady because of a boyfriend issue, and beating that young lady to a pulp.
That's expulsion.
That's right. But you've also got those 3 young ladies. Are we just going to put them out on the street?
Well, let me ask you this. Right now it says 365 calendar days. 90 school days is a lot more, is not calendar days. So if how many days is that? If I give you 90 school days.
It's half the school year because the school year is 180 days.
So half the school year is available now to you in this amendment.
I understand that, and it certainly is better than 45 days, but it's gonna result in a lot more expulsions and fewer kids getting services rather than more, which I thought was is the opposite of what I thought the intent of the bill was.
Let me go back to Senator Donovan's question. When you do it for 365 days, they're gone for the year, and then you bring them back in, starting over again. Integrating them in after 90 days, is that a problem?
In cases of serious offenses, yes, it is. And I think one of the suggestions that we offered, I think, goes towards what Senator Donovan is trying to get at, which is bringing them back in sooner. If we have this long-term suspension for 364 days, but we say we will meet with you at the end of each grading period, that's going to incentivize the student to behave in such a way that we are able to bring them back sooner. So I think that the idea that we propose really gets at what Senator Donovan is looking
Right.
for.
I think the committee knows what the amendment does and what we're trying to get at here. I know Senator Locke has a question here.
What is a serious offense that would lead to a 364-day suspension?
Repeated gang activity, drugs, weapons. You know, we've had kids set schools on fire, and you say that would be an expulsion, okay? But mainly it's those serious and often repeated activities. You know, you suspend the child. Discipline is at times cumulative. In terms that you start out with lesser issues, and then it works up when the child doesn't respond.
Everything you've explained, Tom, is a criminal offense.
Right.
And you're saying that after 365 days, you're gonna bring them back after they set the school on fire, they assaulted?
Well,
And they're probably gonna still be in jail after 365, so I don't know how you're gonna
my
bring them back.
experience, Senator, is that the juvenile justice system tends to work fairly slowly. And so sometimes you would expect them either to be arrested or put in jail or put in detention, and it takes a while for that to happen. Sometimes the juvenile justice system, you know, puts them on probation. And when they're on probation, I can't keep them out of school. So it's, again, we're looking at extreme situations to go past the 90 days.
Right.
I am appreciative, as Stacy says, we're going from 45 to 90, but I have superintendents out there that are scratching their heads how they're going to deal with these extreme behaviors and still provide the child service, but also keep the schools safe.
All right. Senator Howe, let's.
A few minutes ago, you made the comment that you wanted to incentivize the students to change their behavior. I think the message we're trying to get across, or I'm trying to get across, is we want to incentivize the school systems to do a better job of dealing with these kids. And just taking them out of school, depriving them of their education, setting them farther back, not providing services is not the way to incentivize. And I think these are message bills, and I feel very strongly in agreement. And I'm kind of appalled that here, when we thought we had a deal changing it from 45 to 90, that now you're pushing for more, because my inclination is to go back to 45.
That was not we talked with Senator Stanley with a proposal, and I understand it's his prerogative to accept our proposal or not, but the amendments that are being offered are.
Senator Dudman, and one more question, and then we're gonna take the bill as amended before us.
To see if we can diffuse where we are here. If we look at this as parents and legislators and a society, one of the opportunities we have to redirect a population of kids who are ending up fairly hopeless is to figure out how not to separate them from education. And they're already obviously a challenge for you guys in school, but it's all of our problems. So we're arguing over the number of days that we're going to separate them from school, when it would be really helpful if we were constructively talking about how we were going to re-engage them. And that's what I think is lacking. We hear your message about how much you want to separate them from the other children, but I haven't heard a single metric about which you use to measure that they're ready to reintegrate with the population. I like the idea, I'll be honest, of having a review after every marking period, and coupling that with the idea of there's some benchmarks and some structure that we begin to develop so that we can get these kids. I don't know if you're going to incentivize them. I don't know if they have anybody at home to feed them or make sure they do their homework. Let's all be honest. You offer homebound is not very effective. I mean, just if we're really going to be candid, we can say all these things and agree. And so this is the beginning of us making a change that will make a difference for everybody in society. We need your help. We need you to help us not separate these kids for us and come up with something new. So I just needed to say that.
Okay. All right, so we have Senate Bill 995 before us as amended. Is there a motion on the amendments?
Motion to accept the amendments.
There's a motion to accept the amendments in a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Alright.
Mr. Chairman,
Now, we have 995 as amended before us.
would you consider a friendly amendment of developing a system by which they evaluate the child after each marking period? And
Sure, within
maybe
the
they
90
could
day
come back
period.
before 90 days?
Within the 90-day confines of that, or cap, yes, absolutely.
Alright, Tom, could you,
Have that ready?
okay. Alright. Alright, we have a motion to amend the amended bill that we have before us to add a review within the 90-day period for determining if they're ready to be integrated back into the school system. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Alright, and that'll be ready at full committee, so now we have the bill before us as amended.
Move to report as amended. Second.
The bill has been properly moved to report as amended. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Alright, that bill's reported.
Mr. Chairman, to move quickly, then from our discussions and further review and even discussions with other people, 996 was really defining disorderly conduct and not allowing disorderly conduct to be considered for long-term suspension unless the behavior included potential physical injury, criminal threat, physical injury. Now, based on our conversations, Mr. Chairman and members, I'd ask that before the full committee that Senate Bill 996 be struck at this time.
Alright. Is there a motion to strike 996? It's been moved and second to strike 996. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Alright, that bill's struck. 997.
997 was the kindergarten through, it started as kindergarten through 5th grade that could not be suspended or expelled. My seatmate and this fine chairman that we have here gave a scenario which I pondered as we talked about. First, we reduced it from pre-K to 3rd grade on Senator Howe's motion, and the second being that what we're looking at was the suspension. When Johnny, I think your example was when Johnny bit the teacher's hand. I later learned from the chairman that that actually was a real-life story he was telling me. And,
Wasn't John.
Well, his name wasn't Johnny, that's right. So that, based on our discussions then, and the need for there's being some kind of accountability there and also parent involvement, the suspension in the pre-K through 3rd would not exceed 5 days, 5 days.
So, the amendment would be, a suspension not to exceed 5 days, in any situation preschool through 3rd grade. So there would still be the ability to suspend for up to 5 days, and expulsions are still there for any, other offenses. Is there a motion on that amendment?
Move to amend.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we amend Senate Bill 997. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Alright, all opposed? Now, quickly, I know there's some opposition. Is there anybody wanna speak again to this, that you have anything new to add?
Mr. Chair, committee members, Amy Willard with Legal Aid Justice Center. I would just say on the amendment that most of the incidents of suspension for this age group are short-term suspensions, which is up to 10 days. It's 2 full weeks of school. We are only cutting that in half for very young children. And I appreciate Senator Stanley making that compromise to move the bill forward.
Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee, thank you. Bill Ray with the Virginia Catholic Conference in support of this bill.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Allison Gilbreth, Voices for Virginia's Children, and we support the bill with the amendments.
Becky Bowers, I'm here with the Counselors Association, we support.
Okay.
Bruce Kemp with the Family Foundation, we also support the
And with Carol Nagel with the League of Women Voters supports this.
Candace with the Advocates for Equity in Schools, while we don't like the 5-day time frame because we're utilizing children who don't have the emotional ability to act appropriately. We will support this bill as it is for now.
Ashley Wright, representing our Virginia Municipal Bills.
All right, now, opposition.
5 days is better than nothing, but 5 days may not be sufficient. Even though you have 8-year-olds, and this is not necessarily as pulling pigtails. We have children that do some extreme behaviors, some for what they see at home, some for what they experience out. But we still have to keep the building safe. 5 days for somebody who exhibits some, unfortunately, I'm going to use this term, aggressive sexual behavior. We don't necessarily expel third graders, but this bill would require us to do something to keep that child out of school if what we were trying to work with took more than 5 days.
Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman, CCN Sports Association, we still have serious concerns with this bill. As I understand the amendments, the maximum we could do with a student in grades K through 3 is 5 days, and I don't, it's not common, but there are situations in which a longer suspension for a student in that population is appropriate. We have students who can be very aggressive towards teachers or other students, and this is really tying the school division's hands and making it so that we, in extreme circumstances, can't provide a safe learning environment for all the other students and for a safe place for our teachers.
Anyone else? Okay. All right, anyone on the committee have questions? Everyone, we've heard this bill. Let me make something else clear. We've heard the bills twice now. We've heard the arguments. So when we get back to full committee, we're not going to rehash all this again. So just if you have questions, let's find them now so that we can get to the bills. And
Mr. Chair, I voted for the first bill. If there wasn't an issue, I don't think it would have gotten this far. I don't think it's been brought to our attention. As far as the one that is currently before us, I'm in favor of leaving that at the discretion of the schools at this point.
Sure.
I know we moved down from 5th to 3rd. Mr. Stanley and I have been having some brief discussions back and forth, but we'll leave that in the school's hands at this point. If it turns out that they're using bad judgment, we get more reports of these kids, and I don't know how many are being suspended at this point. Does the patron know?
Yes. Mr. Chairman.
Of K through 3rd grade.
K through 3rd grade? Yes. That was why, if you recall, the statistics I gave you were based on pre-K through, the bill was pre-K through 5th. Through 3rd grade, short-term and long-term suspensions were on average, let's go to the 6, 15, 20, about 15 now. Pre-K 295, this was in this 1 year that K 3130 plus 12, which were the long term, that's added. 305 pre-K, this is short term and long term together. 3900 to 3920 for first grade. 3842 or 52 for second grade. And 3rd grade had 4,589 short term suspensions and 34 long term. It's not insignificant.
That's my no on this bill.
okay. All right, have the bill before us as amended. Is there a motion?
Move to report.
All right, there's a motion and a second to report the bill as amended. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The bill report is 4 to 1.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, guys, sir. It's always lovely to see you a second time.
Yeah. Let's take up Senator Wexton and Senator Reeves' bill. Last committee we had, we merged these two bills together, and Senator Reeves has asked that we once again roll his bill into yours. I think these got caught up because they were disciplinary bills. So all we need to do is make the motion to roll Senator Reeves' 1163 into Senator Wexton's 1082.
So, yes, I'll make that motion.
All right, it's been moved and second, and we roll 1163 into 1082. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? And we will need a motion that the motion that we had last week was to report the bill as a rolled amended bill. Yes.
I move to report the bill as rolled and amended.
All right. So motion and a second to report the bill as it was rolled and amended. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right. Just had to take care of some housekeeping matters there.
And then Senate Bill 829, come back to that.
829. All right, Senate Bill 829, you're directing the Board of Education to establish guidelines for long-term suspensions. I think we just did that.
And that's, yeah, this is different though because it's a section 1 bill, so I don't know what, it's the committee's pleasure to do that.
It was not rolled in, was it?
No.
Is there anybody who?
Yeah. Well, we can. All right, anybody this is a section 1 bill that directs the Board of Education to establish guidelines for long-term alternatives to short-term and long-term suspensions. So does anybody in the audience like to speak to the bill?
Mr. Chairman, we're School Board Association, we're in favor of this bill. I mean, I think the subcommittee reported it last week. We would hope that you would report it again.
In favor?
Julian, yeah, for
Okay, anybody in opposition? All right.
And Mr. Chairman, I would just say, I would hope that this would be that positive step that Senator Donovan was speaking about coming up with alternatives rather than just
So this will help
following over the number of days.
when the reviews are done. So, yeah. All right, the motion to report, is there a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, bill reported.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Now, Senator McClellan.
Yes. So one of them's gonna be real easy. Senate Bill 1477, I'd like to move to strike.
Okay. Is there a motion that we strike Senate Bill 1477? All right. It's been moved and seconded. We strike 1477. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
And then for Senate Bill 1475, I'll have a line amendment. I'm not gonna do that first.
Yep.
Okay, so on line 15, strike until maturity, and insert before marriage. My intent was just to read that language and not to change it.
Go ahead, Tom, and report that.
Yes, sir. On line 15, after sexual activity, strike until maturity and insert before marriage. So that definition of absence of education it would remain unchanged from current law.
Move to accept. All right, it's been a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye. All opposed? So now we have.
So what Senate Bill 1475 does now, you'll recall, just to do three things. The heart of the bill is in lines 43 to 45. You'll recall last year we added to the family life education curriculum information on age-appropriate information on prevention of dating violence, domestic abuse, sexual harassment, sexual violence, etc. And this would add the concept of consent being required before sexual activity. Right now, sexual activity without consent is a crime. And this bill was brought to me by a group of students who basically recognize that while that information appropriate when the curriculum deals with sexual activity also include the concept that you have to have consent, so that we can start to address that issue when students are first learning about sexual activity and sexual violence and domestic violence. The two other things the bill does is on line 23, the current curriculum includes information on how to avoid sexual assault. And these students, most of whom are the survivors of sexual assault, really feel that that language sort of stigmatizes the survivor because it sort of suggests if you didn't avoid it, it's your fault. And so this would change that language to prevent, just a little less harsh. And then finally on line 20, it adds, currently the Family Life Education discusses the value of marriage. This adds in family relationships, because family is more than just husband and wife, it's parents, it's grandparents, it's siblings, and with the advent of kinship care, and we do have a lot of children who are raised by people outside of their parents, to get the concept of the importance of the family unit, not just sort of husband and wife. That's the bill.
So on line 20, when you just say family relationship, you're not going to define all those things that you just described?
When you, I guess it's understood, because when you read the whole sentence, it's the value of marriage and family relationships for men, women, children, and communities. And so we're not getting into the business of defining what a family relationship is. It's more to just talk about that family is more than just mom and dad, husband and wife. It's the whole family unit.
Any questions, debate?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Peake.
Is there a financial impact?
No, I did not.
Did anybody?
No. The fiscal impact statement that I received said that the board can absorb this in their existing costs. They already, so there was no fiscal impact or budget amendment required.
Any further questions?
And the students do apologize they couldn't be here, but
anyone in the audience like to speak in favor of the bill? Anyone in the audience like to speak in opposition?
Bruce Kemp with the Family Foundation. We don't like multiple aspects of the bill. First, we don't like the last paragraph at all. And second, we don't really want to see the change in the family relationships language be placed. First, that be placed in a separate sentence and include foster care and kinship care there together. Our preference is not to change the sentence on marriage at all. If we can't keep the marriage sentence intact, and also since you changed the definition of abstinence, that's great. We would urge a no vote on the bill if we can't keep marriage sentences.
Mr. Chair, I had reached out to the Family Foundation to get their feedback on the bill before it was filed and did not get that information back. I have no problem doing family relationships as a separate sentence if that's what they want to do. This is the first day I'm doing it. Again, the whole point is just to say family is more than just husband and wife. It's the whole unit. And he touched on the fact that kinship care, foster care are particularly important aspects of family.
So your suggestion is to strike out and family relationship, add a sentence.
Semicolon, yes, sir.
Semicolon, okay.
Eddie Abel, Virginia Assembly Independent Baptist, and I'm not, she's corrected a great section of it, because of course we're for abstinence and we would still prefer to have some teaching, and I don't know that it might not still be in there. She is dealing with a very challenging situation because there are so many dealing with such diverse family dynamics, and we applaud what she's trying to do. Of course, our goal and our desire would be to see greater emphasis in trying to get the type of character development and character training, which I know also is done through the Family Life Education. But of course, our desire would be to see more biblical based and the encouragement in that way, which I know that public education can't do. But I realize she is dealing with a very challenging and other bills that have come through similar in trying to address this issue. Again, I'm not saying I'm opposed. Again, I want to, and I do want to continue to see, and I don't think she did any damage to this with regards to being able to opt out with regards to that. And so, again, I applaud her for making an effort and for making the change with regards to that. We just, as was mentioned by the Family Foundation, want to maintain what we would call the traditional family model, and encouragement to wait until after marriage for sexual activity because of the challenges that occur if you don't.
All right.
Thank you.
So let's look at the amendment that was suggested by putting a semicolon. If Tom, you could
Just strike in family relationships in line 20, and then line 21 after communities, insert the value of family relationships and 9.
okay. You just add them to the list. Okay. All right. Is there a motion on that amendment?
Move to accept.
Second.
Moved and seconded, we accept that amendment. Now it reads, it keeps intact the integrity of the value of marriage. All right. Any other questions of the patron? Any other comments from the audience? None being heard. Is there a motion on the bill?
Move to report as amended.
It's been moved to report as amended. Is there a second?
Second by Senator Hall.
Second by Senator Howe. All in favor to adopt the bill as amended, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? No.
Aye.
Siobhan's no. 3-2. All right, next is our bills from Senator Suderline, Senator Newman, and Senator Sterling. You're here, you start.
Okay.
These are the it's just a new category we haven't dealt with yet. So.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, this is Senate Bill 1089. It is a bill dealing with SOL reform, and more specifically reducing the number of mandatory SOL tests that are required of Virginia public school students throughout the course of their kindergarten to 12th grade career, reducing that number from where it is now, which is I believe 29, down to the federal mandatory minimum of such tests, which is 17. My wife is a school teacher. We've got one child who is of school age now, and having served on the school board here in the city of Richmond, something that I have often heard from many parents from all walks of life and all different types of districts, whether it's city, suburban, or rural, is that they feel that there is this development of a culture of teaching to the test that is too often felt is driven by the number and the frequency of standardized tests in our public schools. This bill and my belief on this subject is that testing, of course, is good and is necessary, which is why I'm not seeking to undo the SOLs altogether. I think having that level of standardized testing so that we can see how a child in Abingdon is doing versus a child in Richmond versus a child in Fairfax. We can see how all Virginia kids all over the state are doing and make sure that they're meeting a minimum level of competency that we want every Virginia child to have by the time they graduate from high school. But like anything else, it's about finding that appropriate level of the number of tests. And so that's the genesis and the idea for this bill of reducing that number from 29 down to 17. I am aware that Senator Suderline and Chairman Newman also have bills along these lines. And
I think the Senator Suderline's is the reduction again of testing, and I think Senator Newman's is more of assessment of what the tests are producing to see where we go from there. There is, and has been for some time, a committee that looks at these SOL tests to determine which ones need to be taken out. And we've reduced a large number of those over the years. And I'm assuming this didn't come from that study that.
no, it did not. And I should have mentioned there has been good work that has been done by that committee and by others to reform the SOLs. This is what I see as an additional step in that right direction.
Okay. Any questions of Peyton? All right. Anyone in the audience like to speak in favor of the bill? Oh, I'm sorry.
And this is across the board from elementary.
Correct. It is just saying that mandatory minimum of 17, and then we would leave the discretion to the Department of Education to figure out which tests and when.
All right.
Yes, Dr. James J. Fetterman, Vice President of the Virginia Education Association. We support this.
Okay. Tom Spencer, Defense Association. We support it.
Okay.
John says with Virginia Professional Educators, we support the bill as well.
Okay. Senator Sternman, when you reduce it to 17, which test, it's 23 now, 23
It's
29. Which of the other tests are you eliminating to get it to the 17?
So that's why I think as a layperson and not as an educator, that is something that we would leave up to the Department of Education to identify which grades and which subjects are the most critical to ensure that we are testing so that, as I said, our students are graduating with a minimum standard, a core level of knowledge that we want every child to have.
So in essence, you'll bypass what you're going to put it in solely in the hands of the Board of Education and not the innovative study group of the SOL.
Well, not necessarily. I think the study group would certainly be able to help inform through legislation or otherwise what the Department of Education would ultimately decide. I think there's something to be said for leaving that discretion in the hands of the folks who are professional educators and do this for a living. With when you're talking about what the Department of Education is doing, with appropriate collaboration and oversight from the legislature, which is where I think that innovation work group would certainly come in.
Okay. Do you have? All right, Senator Peake.
Did you ask me by the phone?
Is anyone in the audience in opposition?
Well, I move to report what we do.
All right, there's we have a series of bills here, and there's one that Senator Suderline has dealing with the same subject. Let's see here real quick. High school graduation requirements, 1584.
And 1556 for Newman.
Newman's, Senator Newman's is a little, is different because it is, doing a, Board of Education, requirements and, the student, they're basically gonna look into what mathematics, reading, writing. This is putting the cart before the horse in Senator Newman's bill. Basically, this bill would determine the number, yes. And then we have, Senator Suderline would reduce it, right?
Bill is more about what counts as an assessment.
Okay.
Does Senator Newman's bill state how low?
Does not.
Is Senator Newman coming back?
Yes.
Can I, Mr. Chair, I would make the motion that we approve this bill as we have it, and then would they be able to work on rolling them in or combining or?
I don't think that they would probably go together.
Senator Newman, since they're starting this bill, wouldn't
Yeah, they would.
You could roll them.
Yeah.
That's what I,
We could roll Suderline we could roll Suderlines into Newman's, but we couldn't roll.
You can roll Senator Sturman.
Okay.
I submit that we roll, that we roll all three together to be,
That would be
to be
I
amended,
consider
and then
that
co-patron.
a friendly
Okay.
rolling in.
Yes.
All right.
And so that we.
The language would be somewhat different.
Yeah.
Understood.
So
Now, I just
three
wanna
of them.
make that clear, it wouldn't automatically reduce it from the 29 to 17, but it would determine which of those tests would be.
Part of this is about having a continued conversation on
Sure.
the subject.
All right, that would be a proper motion to roll Senate Bill, what is yours? 1089 into 1556. And I hate to roll Suderlines without him being here, but let's just do his now and see if we can get Suderline here real quick.
Does he think it's gonna be rolled?
I think so.
Let's-
Well, we can do it if you like.
I submit that we roll all three together, let the patrons become co-patrons and present us with a good bill.
All right. All right, we're gonna roll Senate Bill 1086, 1089, and 1584 into 1556. All those in favor of rolling these bills together, say aye. All opposed? All right, those bills are rolled. Now, we have one bill, Senate Bill 1556, Senator Newman's.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And your name will appear on Senator Newman's along with Senator Suderline.
Much appreciated. Thank you.
And Senator Newman was here, I don't know where he's gone. Tom, if you'll just explain his bill, can you call him and tell him we're taking his bill up?
Yes, sir. Senator Newman's bill, is an attempt to set the floor of SOL, verified credits in high school. It says that on line, 4950, the board shall, and then you go to line 64, require students to earn at least one verified credit in each of the following subjects: mathematics, reading, writing, science, history, and social science. Such verified credit shall be earned only by a student achieving a passing score on the associated end-of-course standards of learning assessment, and those assessments shall not be diluted or replaced by another assessment.
Okay. All right, let's take comments from those in the audience that would like to speak in favor of the bill. Anyone in the audience like to speak in favor of Senator Newman's bill?
This is okay.
No one, Anyone in the audience like to speak in opposition?
Thank you. My name is Lori McCullough. I serve as the Executive Director of Virginia ASCD, and also am honored to serve as a member of the Innovation Committee. But I'm speaking for the ASCD. We oppose this bill for 3 reasons. First, the bill reverses important aspects of the Board of Ed's high school redesign efforts, which are well underway, and which combine strong academic preparation with multiple pathways into the workforce for students. Second, both higher education and business leaders are telling our education community and have testified before the Innovation Committee that students are coming to them somewhat unprepared, largely because there is a mismatch between the content and skills tested on SOL tests and the content and skills needed for success in continuing education in the workforce. So if we don't have some room to assess skills that are more relevant to the world our students are graduating into, then this unfortunate situation would not change. And this bill, as I understand it, would require us to use SOL tests and nothing else for verified credit. And third, students who are currently allowed to take a substitute assessment, such as an advanced placement exam or an international baccalaureate exam, as a substitute for a less rigorous SOL test, would not be able to continue doing so under this bill. And FYI, on the 17 federally mandated tests, I believe, I'm no expert, but I believe the content areas and grade levels for those tests are part of federal law and not up to the state to decide. Thank you.
One more, or restate that? The 17
The
are.
17 the minimum required tests, the 17 that were referred to a few minutes ago, I believe that those are codified in federal law, along with the grade levels and content areas of those tests.
So you can't go below 17, but you could be above it.
Correct, and it's not just the number, but it's also what content
Right,
areas.
math,
So for example,
science, writing.
correct. So for example, Virginia currently requires an SOL test in writing. Writing is not included in those 17 tests. That's one example.
Good. Tom?
I'm from the Superintendent's Association. I'll try to piggyback off some of the things that Lori said, and I did tell the senator this morning that we were going to oppose the bill. Having been around the table, as I know the senator was back in the 90s when we put the SOLs together, they were there to solve a problem. And that problem was children's core content knowledge. There was great concern, and rightfully so in some cases, and the core content knowledge of children needed to be improved, and the assessments were designed to test that, and to see how we did, and then also to be able to monitor progress from school division to school division. We're in a different age now, similar to where we were back in the 90s, except now what we're hearing from parents and employers is we need to have a way of looking at how they apply the information, not just have the fund of knowledge. And that's what the board and our organization has been looking at moving towards with that. Now, could you design an SOL assessment to do that? Perhaps. We don't have that at present. And so that's why we would like to see some flexibility in this process so that we can move towards that. I recognize and greatly appreciate the senator's interest, and he does have a genuine interest in the improvement of children in school. He always has. First time I met him, I reminding him of this, I was walking into a meeting back in the 90s in what was then called the Commission on the Future of Public Education. I don't know if that dates us both. Was called the Bennett Commission at that point in time, when we were looking at all of these things. And he won't remember this, but I've always remembered. I asked him, because I was new to this, going into special ed, and I said, what do I tell these people? And the senator said, tell them like it is at home. And so I've kept that close to my heart as I've gone through the years. And that's what we're hearing from parents and from employers. We need to find a better way to monitor the progress of these children so that we can know how to best apply that knowledge and they can utilize that. And for those reasons, we've got concerns about the bill.
All right, any other members of the audience like to speak against the bill?
Candace Lucas, once again with Advocates for Equity in Schools. I'm also a licensed educator, special educator, administrator with the Virginia Department of Education, by the Virginia Department of Education. Our concern is that the SOL is the only tool for assessment that's going to disproportionately impact our students with special needs and our students that are not receiving, are not able to achieve or perform standardized testing to the level that is expected. Once again, we're looking at more of a growth model for measuring student achievement as opposed to a proficiency pass or fail model. So we're not in support of the bill at all because it will limit a lot of our children from achieving the credits, verified credit standard, even though they may master the material.
Anyone else in the audience? Senator Newman, you want to speak to your bill?
Sure. I thank everyone who's spoken. I don't know everything was said, and I apologize. It appears that the elevators to the 10th floor are no longer operational. So,
don't get on that one.
Which meant that Senator Howell and Donovan basically just arrived upstairs, so I think they left you a while ago. Mr. Chairman, I think that you've got a history in time. I'm going to give you a short history in time, as Hawken would say. When we were around during the George Allen administration, we basically came up with standards of learning. And why did we do that? We did it because we had a problem, a major problem. We had math, history, science, and English that was going in the wrong direction. College entrance exam for showing it, the SATs for showing it. We were in trouble in Virginia, and we were in trouble really nationwide. So we had seen something that at that time was called social promotion, which sounded great, and some kids loved it, and I guess some parents didn't mind it, but it was cruel to do to our children, and that happened in the backdrop of really very little accountability in public education. A number of us came together with the administration at that time, and in a bipartisan effort, put together standards of learning, and the effects of that were dramatic. We had, in math, history, science, and English, we had recovery, and we had betterments, and then we saw increased in betterments from that as we went forward. Mr. Chairman, since then, there was something that President George W. Bush put in place called No Child Left Behind, and that was a big mistake. And it was a big mistake because it went away from states' rights, and it flooded our schools with tests that we didn't have before. I, along with Senator Hanger, and I'm sure others, just expressed deep concerns about the fact that they were telling us what to do with our school systems. We thought we got it right with Masters in History, Science, and English. Well, the result of that is we ballooned out our testing to where that was really all that was happening. And all of a sudden now you started hearing teachers reasonably say, and students say, I can't learn anything except for what's in the quoted SOS, because they were just so many required. As you know today, what we're looking for in high school, and this is meant to me only in high school, is we are right now have 12, 9, or 6. Okay, so that depending on how you go, generally if you're in an advanced diploma, you have 9. You could take every one of those items in math, history, science, and English, and the one that's quote optional, and you could end up with 9. Or if you get the regular diploma, you could take a few more. The method that the SOL Innovation Committee has been taking, and the board has been taking, has been to go to something that's close to this, and I'll tell you how it's different. But basically to go to math, history, science, and English, and reading. They wanted to add reading, and I don't disagree with adding reading because it shows your ability to bring everything else together. That's fine. It's not something that I brought into the discussion, but they said go to writing as well. The only difference is that they wanted to talk about a local assessment capability in the social studies area. So there's not much difference between this and maybe what the board might agree to, and we can add some couple of things as they make other considerations on other assessments. But it's basically, are we going to have a local assessment or a menu assessment for social studies? Now, if you guys, and those of you that have been on this stuff for a long time, know that the biggest section of the code on SOL requirements is in social studies. That's the section that's the longest. Because we've gone in and said, you got to teach this, and it's everything, it's every It's every founding document, it's everything anybody ever thought about added to the social studies area. So there's a lot in social studies that matters. But the key here is that we are moving from 9 to 5 in this, which is a dramatic change away. And it also means that we no longer will have to take, if you've taken an Algebra 1, you don't have to take a geometry. Under this, no, you don't have to take a geometry. Because remember, we're moving away from George W. Bush and toward minimum tests. So Algebra 1 is it. You don't have to take science, the second sciences. You take one science, you're done. On reading, if you take one of the reading, you're done. You take the writing, you're done. So once you've taken those 5, you're complete. And so the discussion about local assessments, you know, there are some assessment tests that we can talk about and be glad to work with the group on, making sure we have some avenues on those. I think the House is working on some of those. But the real only disagreement between this bill and maybe what the board is working on really is intended to be the social studies. It's the one difference that we can tell, and so we're going to try to protect that. And then also there's been some that say go to the federal minimums, and that scares me the most because I don't want to have anything to do with what they're doing up there. They went the wrong way on No Child Left Behind, and if they one day says it's up to the states, they're gone, then we may end up with a number of months without tests. So this is a dramatic decrease in the number of tests. It follows what a number of people in the SOL innovation wanted to do, especially on the legislative side, and that's the reason that we brought this.
All right.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Peake.
Senator Newman, I think Senator Sturtevant's bill was to go to the federal minimum. How is that gonna, when we roll that in, will y'all be able to resolve that?
Well, it'll be Senator
Just
Newman's line.
Yeah, so what it does, I talked to Senator Sturtevant. He is fine with here. I hope he was here.
He
to
was,
say that.
he says.
Because basically we are going down to the bare minimums of math, history, science, and English with this. The only difference between this and the bare minimums are, I think the department believes, and maybe they're here, or maybe they were upstairs, I don't know, they here, Staples here. Anyway.
You're still at Board of Ed, the State Board of Education meeting today.
That's right, okay. But
I'm here from the Department of Education.
that's a small thing. So, so the only difference is really right now is, could there be an alternative assessment in science? And I don't think the board is, unless they do something today that I don't anticipate, that could happen. And could they have alternative assessment in social studies?
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Peake.
You did not hear the lady speak, you were out. What was your second point, because you thought there was gonna be a problem with a workforce training? Just point two if you could, so Senator Newman could address that.
My point was that if the state, and I understand the concern about local assessments, but whether this would be a local assessment or a state assessment, if there could be assessments that look different from current SOL tests, they could do a much better job of assessing kinds of concepts and skills that are needed for the workforce. Which business leaders tell us current SOL tests do not do a very good job of assessing.
Of sending out students prepared.
Senator Newman.
Well, that's one of the reasons for the bill.
If you'll stay up here, I think Senator Newman wants to.
I appreciate that, because workforce is important, and most of you know just how critical I think it is. But there's nothing in this about workforce. In other words, workforce today, the room that you have workforce today, you're going to continue to have. The only difference is you're going to have to do, depending on whether you're taking an advanced diploma or a regular diploma, about 4 SOL tests less